Hello, and welcome back to the Guns on Pegs podcast. This is episode 8 of series 2. My name is George Brown, and I'm the editor at Guns on Pegs. And as per usual, I'm joined by my colleague and boss, Chris Horn. Chris, how's it going?
I'm good, George. I think we're all a bit better, aren't we? We're recording this soon after Boris has delivered some rather positive news. So fresh off the back of that, we've got clay grounds opening up on the 29th of March, and it looks like things like the game fair are going to go ahead. And most importantly for us, a good shooting season ahead. So very good.
Yeah, it's really exciting news, and I have to say I'm feeling a lot better about life in general.
Indeed. And just before we go on, George, you know that intro music that you just played?
What? Hang on, you mean this?
Yeah. Yeah, the deep South American quail hunting music that we've got as our intro. I think that it's time for a change. What do you think?
It always has felt like it's maybe a bit too American for what we're doing. But I've struggled to think what else.
We never discussed actually it becoming our music. It just became our music, and it was never like, does this sound good? It just was on the first episode.
Well, like a lot of this podcast, we just made it up as we went along, and it seems to have sort of stuck.
Well, look, I think we must have some people who are pretty handy with an instrument, putting together jingles out there. Maybe they're in a band, and I'd love to reach out to you if that is you and you're listening to this. Please email pod@gunsonpegs.com. Not only do we need a new jingle, we'd love to work with you on that. There are a couple of other things that are up my sleeve that we will come to in future episodes that could be terribly exciting, and we need to speak to people in bands. So I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Well, yeah, I think that's suitably mysterious and very exciting. So, Chris, we'd better get on with things and introduce our guest this week.
Indeed. This is the photographer episode, and we're delighted to be joined by a multi-award-winning field sports photographer. You've got all the compliments coming here. This is, if you've read a shooting magazine or you've been on Guns on Pegs even, you will have seen a photo taken by her. Her list of achievements is too long to read out, and she's so good. She's got the ability to make an ugly person look beautiful, as we both know to our benefit, George. Welcome.
Very, very true.
Huge welcome to Sarah Farnsworth.
Thank you, guys. That's quite embarrassing, that list of compliments, which I'm really shit at taking, so I'll just say thanks and say hi. Move on swiftly, please.
Well, they're all thoroughly deserved, Sarah, and particularly on the last point, because you joined the Guns on Pegs team on an end-of-season day at the end of not the last season, but the one before that. I wasn't shooting that day and got a little bit too heavily stuck in the night before in the pub and was very, very hungover on the day in question. And I really expected I was going to look like death in all the photos. And somehow I didn't. So my first question for you, before we get on with the rest of the podcast, is, was that really hard work in post-production? Did you have a lot of editing to do?
I could lie here, but no, I didn't even notice that you were in such a delicate state, let's say. So you got away with it, most definitely.
If I remember rightly, looking back at those photos, you're wearing sunglasses the whole time, George.
Yeah, the whole time, even in the gun
That is true, actually. And do you have the hat on as well? You have
yeah,
the hat
that's
on,
right.
So fair play. Yeah, that's probably why I didn't notice quite too much. But I think men can. It's going to get controversial if I say this, but it's easier for men to get away with it, I think, more than ladies. So moving on again swiftly.
It's an interesting debate.
But I mean, that brings us nicely on to the first part of the podcast, which is always a favourite of ours. Sarah, what's that you're drinking?
Oh, right. As
Gulp.
Gulp, indeed. I am drinking Avalanche, which is thirst quenching pale ale by Fine Ales Farm Brewery, which are based up in Argyll. And the reason I'm drinking this is because my husband Adam and I go stalking up in Argyll quite regularly, or we would do on an ordinary year. And it's the local brewery to where we have our store, and we always pop in and get some beers to take home with us, but we'd actually run out. And recently my dad actually sent a care package of Avalanche because he knows it's my favourite. So yeah, we've been dipping into the box quite sparingly, just every now and then, to have a nice pint of and reminisce over times. Yeah, stalking in Scotland.
Avalanche is a cracking beer. I'm glad you've got that on the pod. That's one of those beers that I have in mind. As I've had Avalanche when I've gone shooting up on the west coast of Scotland, and it's
Oh.
definitely one of those beers. They sort of think, God, I'd love to have that for the pod. And there's a bunch of others actually from up that way where I think, right, I need to source. Actually, what we need to do is go on a beer road trip, George, just to go pick up beers from around the country.
Oh my God.
Well, I mean, it is getting increasingly difficult to think of drinks for us to bring along. We've done 18 of these now. This is the 18th. And yeah.
So you've had about 36 whiskies then?
Well, yeah, I've had quite a few different whiskies. But, if anybody's out there and they've got a beer that they think we should try or a whiskey that they think we should have a go at, let us know. Send us an email, pod@gunsonpegs.com, and we'll give it a go.
Have you got more than one Avalanche lined up, Sarah?
Today, no, I'm just being a little bit sort of circumspect on how often I have an Avalanche. I do want to keep them in reserves until we can go back up there and go to the brewery shop and bring cases of the stuff back home with us. So it's just a nice treat to have every now and then. But it's quite moorish, so you could actually just keep knocking it back all evening, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, dangerous stuff.
It's another one of the nice things about this podcast. It's a real honour that you've decided to open one for us. And actually, we've had a few guests have opened some really, lovely sounding things, haven't we? Had David Gower with his special gin and all that kind of stuff. It's really nice that people are viewing this as a sort of special occasion, so to speak.
Yeah, no, it's definitely is.
So, Chris, what have you got? Another supermarket lager?
Gosh.
I feel like my drinks come out like it looks like I've tried quite hard with them, because each of them has got a story. That the one I drank with Tom, I was particularly pleased about pulling out of the back of the cupboard. And today's is not too far different, but it's a cracker of a story and a link to our guest. So, do you know Chapeldown, the lovely English sparkling wine producer?
Yes.
So they're based just down the road from me here in Kent. They're down in Tenterden. They have a beer called Curious Brew. It's a really lovely beer, and that is what I'm drinking today. But what's so appropriate about this? Well, firstly, unfortunately, they are closing the Curious Brew brand because it relies heavily on sales through restaurants and things like that. They're actually closing it. So this is kind of one of the last cases knocking around a bit. I don't know where it's going, but imagine soon. But more importantly, it was going to be the beer of choice at my wedding that was supposed to happen last summer, at which Sarah was photographer. So the link,
so sad.
The link there is exactly that. But hopefully we'll get a chance at some day soon. I think Sarah and I have been chatting sometime in 2022.
Fingers and toes crossed. Yeah, definitely.
But it's actually we were trying to have everything local for our wedding, actually. So Curious Brew beer from down the road and all the other stuff, and Tom Payne and I had planned to shoot pigeons down the road for the starter. We were going to have all the pigeons, and all the game came off, another shoot in Kent and stuff like that. So Kayak Game and Flames was doing all the stuff. So it was so exciting planning it, and it was kind of just so disappointing not to be able to do all of that. Anyway, Curious Brew, it's a lovely beer. It's disappearing, so go out there and get yourself some where you can. George, what are you on?
So mine's got a weird connection to both of your drinks in that it's got a romantic element and it's from Scotland. My very excellent wife for Valentine's Day gave me a bottle of whiskey. Surprise, surprise. And it's called Copper Dog, and it's a blended whiskey, Speyside whiskies blended together, 8 of them. And it's made at the Craigellachie Hotel, which is literally 2 minutes from where we fish on the Spey every summer. I didn't get to go last year, as I've mentioned before. I've got it lined up for this year. Just booked the time off, in fact, this morning. So it's a lovely reminder of the fun we have up there, and something helping me to not get too excited, but also get excited about my fishing trip this summer.
I did laugh the influx of holiday bookings through through our company calendar straight after Boris's announcement. I thought that was quite an encouraging sign. So, whose bird is it anyway? George, this is very much your section, but I've got to kick it off with something. Do you remember that young lad, Fred, we called him? He featured in the Pigeon Shot episode with Tom Payne.
He was being blackmailed, right, by his brother?
Indeed. He was basically been blackmailed to go on the next duck flight after he'd lied about working. Yeah, so he was actually going shooting, and anyway, he got rumbled by his brother. So he'd been in touch, and he sent us a nice little letter, and he says, "Hi, George and Chris. You guys have given me some great advice for how to deal with my younger brother. I especially like the idea of giving him a good kicking, which I should keep in my back pocket. I think that was Tom's advice. It sounds a bit Tom, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously, since my message, lockdown 3 has been enforced and gone. So this has meant a hold on shooting and therefore given me some breathing room in which to make a decision as to how to deal with the situation. This is why I've been a while in updating you with what I've done. And I've only just settled the dilemma. And basically what happened, we suggested that this lad gets on the front foot and takes the fight to his younger brother. Don't give him whatever you do. That was our advice. So he said, after listening to the podcast, I decided to go digging up some dirt on my brother as suggested. And I asked his girlfriend and our mum for any gossip. I got some good stuff, but nothing quite good enough to challenge him with. I just want to clarify, his girlfriend and his mum are not the same person.
You never know, it might be from Norfolk. I can say that because my mum is from Norfolk.
Dangerous. Anyway,
nice.
That was until I messaged one of his uni friends and I found out he was on course for failing his first year at uni and has had to retake a whole load of exams unknown to the whole family. So when we said get some dirt,
that is proper in-depth snooping, that is, isn't it?
He's struck gold right here. The question is, has he gone too far? Well, is this too much, actually? So before confronting my brother, my girlfriend suggested that exposing him could lead to a much more devastating argument and the situation would get worse. Unfortunately, I begrudgingly agreed with this. I think he's done the right thing there.
Yeah,
at that point, the idea of a good kicking came to mind. So inspired by the topic of the last podcast, we've been settled on the following to guarantee his silence. I will take him with me when I next go pigeon shooting. He won't grass me up to my dad for skiving off work to go shooting in return. And I also gave him a kick for blackmailing me. So Fred has not given up his duck flight, all thanks to the advice from the pod. And I suppose, so Guns and Pegs podcast, solving your dilemmas since 2020.
Yeah, I mean, we seem, against all probability, to have actually given out some good advice. I don't think anybody really expected that.
I don't think you guys do yourselves enough justice. No, I think, it's very valid.
You're too kind, Sarah. Right, so we've got to do this week's dilemma, Sarah, and so we need to follow up that success. Yeah.
We've got... Except Tom's advice wasn't very good, so it's a pretty low base to go from. Just give him a good kicking.
That makes me happy, yeah.
Okay, so this one comes from somebody we're calling Horace. I love making up these names, by the way.
You're like the Met Office, with each hurricane that comes along. You're
Horace.
H now.
Right, so Horace writes, I'm an avid fan of your podcasts and listen with much amusement to the regular quandaries and questions posed by your listeners. I have one of my own, and I'd love to share it with you and receive a second opinion on the dilemma I find myself in. Myself and my girlfriend are lucky enough to live in the middle of a family syndicate, which we support throughout the year and both immensely enjoy beating on. I do try and treat myself to a few days on the other side of the line each season, and last season I managed to nab myself a peg on a lovely 150 bird day, found through Guns on Pegs at a reasonable price. I mean, there's brownie points there right away, aren't there?
Yeah, he's getting better advice for that alone.
I contacted the team captain and asked if it would be possible to bring my girlfriend along for her to experience the day. And I even went to the expense of buying her a lovely new hat and coat so that she felt part of the day. And herein lies my problem. She loved it. She was in awe of the number of birds, as we don't really see that many on our little syndicate, which was her only experience of shooting up until then. The Range Rovers, the bubbly, and the food were outstanding, and we both genuinely loved our day, both in the field and together. Now, I didn't exactly tell her the truth regarding how much this day cost, and she's already asked how many days we're planning on attending next season. Based on the costs I told her, we could go most weekends, but the reality is very different. Do I come clean and tell her how much a day really costs, or shall I try to ensure that this remains a hidden secret?
Oh dear.
He's screwed.
No. Well, he's set a precedent when he's bought her the lovely items of clothing or hat or whatever on this occasion, because whether she'll expect that on each shoot day, that's one whole dilemma in itself, never mind the actual shooting costs.
That is a whole additional expense, isn't it? A new outfit for every shoot day.
Made a very good point.
Yeah, that's not cheap. But I do wonder if he just sort of says, and it's a nice tie-in for Guns on Pigs here, is it says, well, it was the most wonderful deal. They had a special going on. It was COVID. Everything was heavily discounted for this one thing, and it was a one-time only deal. So sadly, we can't expect that every time. And just sort of, just fudge it as a bit of a, it was a real special rate that he'd managed to get through Guns on Pegs, and that wasn't ever going to be possible or feasible in the near distant future, especially as we've had the news now. If everything keeps going in the right direction this season, it might be a bit more normal. So people may not have to discount days to get them completed. I don't know. So things will be...
You're suggesting...
Now with the news, it might shift perspective of what costs can be. I don't know.
Well, that gives me an idea. The key here is to join Guns on Pegs Premium. Shameless plug time. You get fantastic discounts on shoot days. Some as much as 20%. I think we've even seen like a 50% discount before.
Wow.
So at the very least, you're going to get some better value shooting. I think that's the answer, isn't it? Join Premium, and then you don't have to make up too big a figure.
Look, I think we'll go a stage further, George. It's a cracking shameless plug, and I applaud you for that. And I think that Horace here deserves a free premium membership because he's in a right quandary.
Well, especially if he's going to have to shell out on, another pair of shooting socks, or I don't know, nice silk scarf or whatever for each occasion out in the field. He's going to need to save as many pennies as he can.
Well, he's got a pair of garters coming his way, so he can pass them on as a present to his other half.
I was going to say, do you think we send 2 pairs?
Oh, that's a good shout. I like that.
This is like Christmas comes early for Horace. He's got 2 pairs of garters and a premium membership. We haven't even started going yet.
Just because he confessed to something to you guys, he's getting all the
Look, let's be honest, we're absolutely the winners out of this because I do not envy his position one bit.
Also, it's because we're coming towards the end of the series and we're getting a bit D-more pappy. That's what's going on here.
Give it all away.
Either way, he's backtracking. This is quite a regular thing. We've had many little requests over the years from other halves through the website looking to buy sort of £25, £50 gift vouchers for Christmas for shoot days for their other halves and things like that.
Oh no!
We just folder them. We don't even reply because.
Yeah,
it's a little bit awkward, but I think that your advice, Sarah, is sound. He's got to try his best to dig himself out of this situation and go forward. We will do our bit to help, and I'm even tempted to say, ring the office next time you're in a quandary. We'll go that little stage further, see if we know anything, put a string or two. But George, have you got anything to add to that?
Well, I mean, I've been married for just over a year now. And in that time, I have learned that generally honesty is the best policy. And that's also been a running theme with some of these quandaries as well. People have been skiving off work or what have you. And generally we've said, look, the best thing to do is to be honest at the start, because if you get caught out, you're in serious trouble. And I think he's nearly been caught out. And if he doesn't come clean now, you're just compounding the problem. And when you've then bought 5 or 6 days, and then she finds out how much you've been spending on shooting, that's when you're in real trouble. At this point, it's 1 day, 1 peg. It could get really bad.
Yeah, nip it in the bud. Nip it in the bud now, and then he's sorted for all eternity of any shoot day he wants to book without feeling any guilt and racking up those.
And I suppose the other thing he could do is suggest that she splits the cost with him. How about that?
How very modern.
It depends. It depends if she shoots, whether she wants to share the peg. Was that mentioned in the original communications?
No, it wasn't.
She was just okay. That could be the sticking point. I mean, he could go down another route and get her shooting lessons, and then that might be cheaper long run to then splitting the peg between them. I don't know if that balances out eventually.
Yeah, share a syndicate place or something.
Whatever happens, we need to know how this goes, because there's enough people on either side of the debate here. We'll definitely have listeners right now thinking, if my wife knew how much or she sold my purdies for how much I tell her I paid for them, that whole debate.
Chestnut.
Exactly. So we need to hear back from Horace, and we will do our best to help him because this could go terribly wrong for him quite quickly.
Right, so Horace, you are going to get a pair, or possibly two. I don't think we made a decision on that. Of Guns on Pegs podcast shoot
And a
two
premium
pairs and a premium member, 2 pairs of Guns on Pegs shooting stock garters, and a premium membership, and personalised advice from the team if you phone the office next time you're looking for shooting. So you've done very well out of this. So if anybody else needs any further incentives as to why you should get in touch with the podcast, pod@gunsonpegs.com. There is your answer. But actually, Chris, we've got more correspondence to do, because in the previous episode, we asked for suggestions for like a collective noun, like a name for all of the people who've been sending in their quandaries and letting us know where they're listening and all that sort of stuff. And we've had a few suggestions, haven't we?
We have. Yes, so Andrew has suggested Songbirds as the collective noun for Guns on Pegs podcast listeners, because they always lead the way and lift first. I like his justification. Not a massive fan of the collective noun, if I'm honest. But
my problem with Songbirds is that it sounds a bit like we're going to dob people in, which is sort of not the point, isn't it? If you're in criminal terminology, if you're a songbird, you're a bit loose-lipped, and we've been very careful not to give people's identities away throughout.
This is true.
And then, so the other one that we've had is from somebody called Charlie, and I've been waiting for an email that starts like this. It says, "Hi lads, long-time listener, first-time caller." Which is great. He said, "I wanted to give my suggestion for the collective noun, which is Peggies." And again, it's good, but I'm not sure we're quite there yet. So if you've got an idea... Oh, Sarah, have you got an idea?
Well, I did, but I think it's a bit naff now, listening it back to myself. But in terms of...
Go for it. There's no such thing.
In terms of your sort of... In terms of the shot, when you take a shot, it's something to do with the pattern. So the load, anything along those lines where the individual shot... it could be representative of the members and relatively from a contained space going out into the wider world, something pattern shot related.
A load of listeners.
I quite like load.
A load of listeners. It can be open to interpretation in many ways, but whether that's good or bad, I do not know.
I think there's no misunderstanding what a load of listeners is.
Very true.
Yeah. So yeah, if you've got an idea. And it's better than any of the three that we've just suggested.
Please do.
Send us an email, pod@gunsonpegs.com, and if we go with your suggestion in the end, you too will get a pair of the very exclusive Guns on Pegs podcast shooting stock garters. Right. Gosh, that was quite a lot of admin at the beginning of this one, wasn't it?
It's not really admin. It feels like my sort of weekly getaway. It's like life. It's this other life that we live, that we chat about with our headphones on. So I wouldn't call it admin, but yeah, on to Sarah. We need to ask you some important questions.
No.
This seems like a fairly obvious place to start. The first question that I wanted to ask you is how it is that you got into field sports photography in the first place. Was it like a passion for field sports first and then photography, or was it photography first and that you then decided to apply it to field sports?
I guess it was... I started following my local pack of hounds with my granddad from about the age of 10 onwards. So it was almost very much the hunting with hounds element of field sports that sort of took me first. And I then borrowed my mum's camera when I was in my early teens. This is a film SLR camera, and she was a little bit cross that she didn't get it back. So eventually they sort of decided to swap it out as Christmas and birthday presents would be a new bit of camera kit, either a lens, or this is back in film days. And I just sort of accumulated camera gear and would take it out hunting with my granddad. This is long pre-ban. Yeah, when I was about 12 or 13. And it sort of grew from there, really, and did a foundation fine art photography course. And I should have gone on to do a full 3-year degree in photography, but I was very much a home bird, didn't really like the concept of university life, and wanted to sort of bring it into the real world and take photographs. It started off, it was hunting that was my main passion to start with, and then it just expanded from there to shoot days, sort of seeing the gamekeeping side of life, and then on to deer stalking, and it's just snowballed really to the wider world of everything connected with field sports community from there.
I must add at this point, if you haven't seen any of Sarah's stuff, either go and follow her on Instagram or go and have a look at her website to see the vast range of photography, because that's what's most awesome. I think there's very few people on my personal account. I try and sort of separate a bit of shooting sometimes. I follow obviously like some good mates and some important stuff, but very few things that I follow that I just, spend a lot of time looking at. And your photos always pop up there because they get such massive amount of attention from everyone because they're awesome. But do go and have a look.
Thank you.
So you basically skipped uni because you're already too good at it. That's what I've just understood from this.
Oh, hardly. Oh, don't. That's embarrassing. No, it wasn't quite like that. Yeah.
So, you mentioned kit, and it's something that's come. I think there's some big crossover here on the sort of photography side to the shooting side, because shooting people spend half their life talking about kit and all the various different things that you can do, and especially when it comes to cartridges. I mean, you can get bogged down in a conversation there very quickly. So, for those that know what they're talking about, and I imagine we're going to have a few hardcore enthusiasts who really understand photography, and I really don't. The best I get is a filter on Instagram. What kit do you use? And can you sort of give that to us in terms? Just talk us through that sort of stuff, because I imagine there's quite a few that think, oh, I'd love to take better photos out in the field. Where do they start as well? And how does that relate to what you use?
I started, I first went, obviously it's not an option now, but I went to a show at the NEC, a camera show, and held both the Canon and Nikon top of the range early days of the digital SLR back then, and just handled them both. And ergonomically, the Nikon kit, for starters, just felt right in my hands, and I knew that was the gear that I wanted to make use of. And it's grown throughout the years, built up and up to having better and better kit. And I will admit the stuff I use now is very much investment pieces in terms of cameras. I think it's been superseded the model I've got now. So it's the Nikon D5, and yeah, very much an investment camera body. And there's a whole heap of lenses that go with it. And that's the 70-200 lens, which is a really fast sports lens, and 24-70, they're the main kit, and a 35mm f1.4 lens. I'm looking at Chris's face, and it's kind of you're looking a bit blank there. Sorry.
It's like some of my mates when I start talking about
out there.
32-gram 5 wads, they just glaze over.
I thought I'd just whip through them quickly. There are any photography enthusiasts, because that's what I use. So Nikon D5, those are my main lenses, and I also have the Nikon Z6 mirrorless camera, which is it's okay. It's not quite there yet. I think mirrorless is definitely improving massively, and it's going to become a bigger part of professional photography. I'm sure that is the way it's going.
What's mirrorless?
Right, confession time. I'm not a technical photographer at all. I was very much although I did learn the technical aspects when learning, very much sort of trial and error with all my kit. And I've got to using it the way I do, and it's probably very different to a lot of other professional photographers. But with a DSLR, so you have a mirror that locks up and locks down for when you take a photograph. And you can, if you opened up the inner workings of the camera and you press the shutter, you could see the mirror lock up and lock back, or flick up and flick down, I should say. You can lock the mirror open, but with the mirrorless, it's digital only. And I'm sure there'll be people furiously correcting me now on how the actual terminology, but it's a very different process. There's no actual physical shutter as such. So you could have a completely silent shutter, which has its benefits. And that's the reason I've got one, is for deer stalking. And if you're doing something alongside somebody filming and you need to get stills of whatever's being filmed, it's very helpful to do that. But the quality of the mirrorless it's not quite there yet. The dynamic range of the highlights and shadows that it can sort of contain in an image just don't quite meet up to my D5. Or maybe I just haven't discovered how to produce that yet.
This is proper advice. And this podcast,
I don't know.
This podcast occasionally gives out dangerous advice to people. It's actually quite good. And what you've given, if you're interested in cameras, you've actually just given real advice. That's really cool. I like that. But it sounds like what you're talking about is super pricey.
Yes, the D5, the camera body alone. I mean, I say it's been superseded. I dread to think what the D6 is costing, but the D5 brand new is 5,200, I think.
Ooh,
and the lens,
so like a sort of mid-range shotgun.
Yeah,
it's basically we've moved on from the silver pigeon and we're on to sort of customizing our engraving by this point.
Yeah, it's not it's cheap. Like I said, it's an investment, and the lenses you'd be looking at between 1,500 and 2,500. That's not to say you have to have that kit to take good shots, because I see a lot of photographers that are hobbyists that just have a basic end camera model, but they still take stunning pictures. So I think if you know your way around the camera and you've done some tutorials and you've got a really good eye for it as a starting point, that makes a big difference. And I would definitely advise, yes, if you can only afford one or two things that are on the expensive end, go for good high quality lenses. That would be the best advice. The camera body you can get away with, providing the resolution's there, but the lenses, if you can really get good glass, that's definitely key point.
Just a question on that, because your if I see one of your photos, and let's say I just see the photo with no credit, nothing, not posted by you, I know it's one of yours. Is that purely because of that particular lens that you've chosen, or is it something that you put in front of the lens, or is it something to do with post editing?
Probably the editing, because that's where you can really define and put your stamp on what the images turn out like, because so many people shoot with a 70 to 200mm lens, f2.8. That is kind of a standard go-to. A lot of sporting and field sporting photographers would use that, but it's then how you compose the picture, I think editing is probably the most obvious way that you can put a stamp on it as your work. And if you sort of scroll through Instagram on someone's grid and see all the pictures, it would look maybe different colour tones and things, but generally consistent, unless you're experimenting with new styles of editing. But yeah, that's a nice thing to hear, that it's one of mine, because that means that hopefully I have a brand, I have a style, and that's something people want. And that's, consistency is quite key in that.
Absolutely. Definitely.
That's really, I have to confess that I do not know, I hardly know one end of a camera from the other, as my wife is constantly telling me when I'm instructed to take photos of the twins or whatever. But because of Instagram, anybody out there with an iPhone thinks they're pretty good and thinks they can take decent pictures. But we know from some of the photos that we see through Guns on Pegs that there's a lot of bad photos out there as well. So for people who are out on a shoot day and they've got their phone in their pocket, they haven't got any kit, but they've got a relatively decent smartphone, what are the key tips for taking some decent, and not kind of publication quality, just to improve the photos that they take, I suppose, is what I'm driving at.
Okay, so if you've just got your iPhone, then I would say, this is as an iPhone user, I wouldn't know for Android. I'm really sorry about that, guys. But
George is a keen Android user. It's a big debate in the office.
But if you've got an iPhone, I think it's the X or the 10 onwards might be earlier models, but certainly the newer ones, which most people would have, has portrait mode. And that is a huge help for taking photographs, because you can set it in portrait mode. You can play around with the depth of field in camera, in phone as such. And then there's more scope for editing it after you've taken the photograph, which is fantastic. The only thing that portrait mode doesn't cope well with is barrels of guns, because they generally, obviously, they stick out. So portrait mode can't necessarily work out where the gun ends and the landscape in the background begins. So that's something that is, portrait mode would be the way I'd shoot if you can, and get to grips with your phone the same way that I get to grips with my camera. So really know every setting, delve into the deepest, darkest points of your phone, of where the camera settings are, and work out what suits you best. And then if you can get an editing app for your phone, I use Lightroom Mobile, which then is not synced, but I have the same settings saved on my phone or very similar to how I produce my images on Lightroom desktop for my photos taken with the camera. So if you can do a little bit of tinkering on there, that would be on your phone. That's an app that I would definitely make use of.
That's really interesting. Can I, on the settings thing, you refer to portrait mode.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that you don't mean selfie camera there. Is
No.
Is this me showing my ignorance of iPhones?
George, go and get a decent phone and you know all about it.
Yeah.
I said I don't know anything about this.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what. I don't know what Samsung or Sony. I don't even know who else is making phones these days. So trying to think who else. But yeah, I only know iPhones. So portrait mode is a different mode where you can, as you scroll along the various settings, so you can shoot in panoramic mode, you can do slow motion, time lapse, and then
Gotcha.
portrait is one of the options there. And then when you shoot in portrait, it'll show you the image. It somehow magically blurs out the background so that you can see it as you would taken with a camera. And it does give that depth of field, and you can actually alter the depth of field afterwards, editing within portrait, where you view the photo on your phone. So
good tips.
Very good tips. So this is a sort of bit of a follow-up question, again, based on my complete inability with a camera of any description. My tactic when I'm trying to take photos is to just take loads and hope that one of them's okay. So how much of getting the perfect shot comes down to luck? How much of it is being in the right place at the right time? How much of it's planning and skill and a sort of understanding of what's going on a shoot day?
Oh, that's a really good question, and one I don't know the full answer to that. Okay, if you can get yourself in the right place and the right time, that's obviously a big deal. So if you're photographing a shoot day, for example, and you want to know on a specific drive where is going to be the best show of birds, where the flushing point is, anything along those lines, speak very nicely to the keeper or the host or the shoot captain for the day. That is a big part of it. And then once you know this, inform yourself with as much knowledge of that place, of those people, of everything you can beforehand. And that will help massively to get you in the right place at the right time. How you then deal with that yourself with a camera or phone in hand is up to you and how creative your mind is, I guess. And that's just personal preference at the end of the day, how you want to do that. But it does help to know, obviously, all those various points, flushing points, so you can say, right, okay, normally put yourself between peg 4 and peg 5, but maybe not for this drive. Maybe beginning of the drive, pegs 1 to 3 are going to be great to start with, and then after that, the birds will flush further down the line, and you can move with them as you go. Obviously, very discreetly, very much not interrupting the shooting in progress, and
just like your dogs now.
Oh, they're so charming, aren't they? The background, that's highly embarrassing. So my husband Adam, for anyone that doesn't know, my husband Adam has wrangled one of the 3 dogs that we now have, and he just wanted to be part of the show, even though he's disappeared out of the room now.
Send us a photo of him. We'll stick him on social media. Then we know what we're talking about. What you were just saying is absolutely spot on, and it reminded me about. There's another little tip that obviously getting yourself in the right place at the right time is absolutely key, and knowing where the birds are going to come from and knowing how the drive's going to develop is crucial. Taking a good photo, but if you're hello dogs, if you're out on a shoot day, and let's say you're not shooting, and you've got sort of friends, family with you taking photos. One little thing I've noticed is a great little tip for iPhone users out there: make sure you're taking them on live mode. Because then if you're taking it takes almost a small video clip with each photo. You can then select that bit of the shot that was the perfect with the bird flying in the sky or the shot going off out of the end of the barrel. That's the one that everyone likes to get, isn't it? And the live mode enables you to just adjust it and do that. So anyway, I didn't think I'd be able anything to contribute towards photography, but that's my tip.
Actually, on that day that we mentioned at the very beginning when I was horribly hungover, I remember you saying to me after the first drive, I said, how did it go? Did you get some good shots? And you said to me, yeah, I got the Holy Grail or something like that, which is the gun, the shot string, and the bird in the same frame.
Yeah, I remember
and that's just, is that just a luck of the draw? Is it timing or...
Oh, it's a difficult one because it's knowing the gun in front of you some of the time, knowing at what point they often like to shoot the bird, working out where birds are going to be, and then where they're going to take the shot. But it does then vary. My cameras can shoot sort of 11 frames a second. Not that they do, but it is quite a rattle of shots. And generally when people are in the moment, nobody hears any of that in the background, and you hope that one in that sequence is the money shot that you can get, where you can see the full shot string, and then if you can get the sequence, you can get the bird folding nicely, and it looking respectful in that respect as well is a big thing.
So you have to have a pretty good sense of fieldcraft as well. One of the things that you learn when you're learning to shoot is, think about what is the phrase, I don't particularly like it, but it's your kill window. Where is it that you want to shoot the birds? And you're having to do the same thought processes, but almost on behalf of somebody else. Where is this person want to shoot the birds? Rather than, I can decide, but you have to effectively guess where I want to shoot the bird if you're taking pictures. That's a real skill, a real skill.
So, Sarah, I must ask you about travel, because obviously you're in a super lucky position where you get to visit some of the most amazing shoots in the country. You get to travel all over the shop, and I know that this time last year you were in the sun in Namibia photographing the Purdy models for their latest collection. Are there any places that really stand out? And I suppose, how good was that situation in Namibia compared to now?
Oh, that was such a dream. It really was. Namibia was just fantastic. And yeah, it was a year ago, just over a year ago, that we flew back, and we had no idea then that it was going to be the last international travel that I did. George, might I say that is a very good sound of that whiskey bottle. It's a very pleasing audio.
I thought I'd muted my microphone, but I just hit the wave button instead.
I liked it. Sorry. And yeah, we were very lucky to get that trip to Namibia. We had, it was beautifully warm sunshine, fantastic safari. It was a place that was Robin Hurt Safaris hosted at his farm in Namibia, and we got to see some fantastic wildlife. Didn't get to go hunting or anything, but we were able to see a lot of the big game that was around there whilst we were taking photos, and sort of occasionally get them just in the background before they sort of disappeared off into the bush too much.
So, and tell me about some of the other places you've been, because obviously, I mean, for those who follow you on Instagram, they'll know a few, but there's a couple of other absolute highlights you've had in the last couple of years.
I suppose, I think you're probably going down the route of Mongolia is what you might be hinting at.
Yeah,
which was I photographed the Mongol Derby in 2019, which is a horse race that is 1,000 kilometres long, multi-horse race with about, how many riders were there? I think 40 riders, 40 competitors. And they have to ride across the open steppe for about 10 days. The race sort of extended, but we were out there for nearly 3 weeks. And it's a magical country. The people, the families and herders in Mongolia, just wonderful. And obviously the horses, they are the backbone of that country. Everything is horse related. They can ride before they can walk, the Mongolians. And the landscapes are just stunning.
Unbelievable.
It does sound amazing. So both of those places sound like pretty challenging places to take photographs. Particularly, I know that cameras don't get on well with dust, which I imagine there was a fair amount of in Namibia, if not in Mongolia. So what are the most challenging assignments that you've been on, both in terms of for the equipment and in terms of like getting the shots that you need?
Well, I think probably those two would have been quite high up on the list, but I had expectations that Mongolia was going to be worse on the dust. I think it was, I say bad. It was, you just have to take good care of your kit, but actually the UK is probably the worst. It sounds really bad to admit, but it's because of the amount of wet and rain and sometimes really crappy conditions, especially in the shooting season, because, how many days probably you can count on one hand how many shoot days in a season are dry and sunny, and the rest is quite damp, quite rainy, and wet kit is not great. The main issue is condensation. So if you're driving between drives in your own vehicles, then the main issue is condensation within the cameras. So it goes from being out in the cold, damp environment to the warm, and then of course everything steams up, and then you're waiting for it to sort of clear by the time you get back out for the next drive. Or, like me, and which not upsets Adam, but yeah, it's not that popular. Having the windows open the whole time, even if it's raining, so that the cool air can circulate around the kit and make sure nothing gets too much fogged up in between drives. So yeah, sorry, the UK, it does. I think I'd rather have a bit of dust than I would rain, to be quite honest. So.
It's a difficult one though, complaining about sort of being wet on a grouse moor in October, isn't it? Because it's a lot better than just being anywhere else, even then.
True. Yeah, I suppose what's considered a bad day for me in that respect, people would be sort of pinching themselves and to have that chance.
Going back to the the challenge of getting a shot, obviously there's a conflict between good shooting weather and good photography weather. So that must be one of the toughest things, is that what the guns want is a sort of greyish day, and what you want is nice bright sunshine.
Yeah. Gamekeeper's nightmare.
Nice dramatic shadows, all that kind of thing. So that must be one of the biggest challenges, is it not?
It probably is, yeah, because a gamekeeper will be cursing that bright sun, especially if it's, where the line of guns are having to look towards. That is an issue. But for me, light is everything. A bit of sunlight makes everything, just makes everything pop. That's not to say I don't like the greyer days, the darker days, because if you get some really cool dramatic light, it's when it's just flat white sky. That's my least favourite, because the birds don't show up. I'd rather have a rainstorm that blows through and you get amazing clouds and dramatic skies afterwards than something that's flat white and grey all day. That's just a little bit. The Guns on Pegs day was, I don't think it rained, but it was quite sort of, it blew through weather systems, and there was great light. So sometimes there's a bit of cloud, sometimes a bit of sun, and that's ideal for me. A real mix of conditions is best.
So just thinking about the shoots in their own right for a second, you've obviously been over a lot of places. Just talk to me about shoots, your knowledge of shoots. You're coming at it from a totally different position to someone standing on the peg. Tell me about your favourites. I really want to know where you'd go to.
Well, this is coming from a very much an aesthetics perspective as opposed to actual sporting, but they still produce fantastic shooting, so it's very much valid. And I'll go around the UK, I think. So I've had a little think about this in the run up to this day. So in England, I would go down to the West Country, down to any of the Luyton shoots. I keep umming and ahhing. Chalacombe is just fantastic. It's beautiful because of the reservoir that they have there. Coombe Sydenham is lovely because it's more forested, woodland, and it's just that's gorgeous. And if you can hear any whining in the background, it is a spaniel, and she just wants to be part of the show.
Exmoor is absolutely beautiful. I have to agree with you on what you're saying there in terms of being out somewhere just so lovely. I love shooting down that part of the world.
And it's like stepping back in time for Exmoor as well. For me, I used to go there a lot, stag hunting in the past, so it's a really special place. I just love it. Especially, I never used to see the that part of Exmoor from a shooting perspective. It was always with hounds, so to see it from both sides now, it's so much more of a rounded view on how important hunting and shooting is to that part of the world. It's vital for the amount of people and the crossover between the two. It's it's a big part of Exmoor, really.
So where are you off to in Wales?
Wales, I would have to go to a place that you have been, Chris, and I've photographed you, which is and I'll never pronounce it right, so apologies, is Llywelyn Garth. Up in I don't have a gloss over that. Up in North Wales, this scenery there is just spectacular. The mountains and the birds are stunning, and
is that where you took that incredible picture of Chris as the reaction shot?
Yes.
I think Chris, I mean, I'm gonna embarrass you now, Chris, because I can only assume from the expression on your face that was a good 100 yards up, because both you and the loader look absolutely astonished. So either you were shooting terribly all day and you finally got one, or it was just an absolute screamer. Is that where that picture was taken?
So, well, I'll answer for Sarah. Yeah, it absolutely was, and it was about the only bird I hit on the drive. So I was
no, don't be daft.
It was I mean, if you want the wheels to come off on a shoot, go to Let Weddigarth. It will tear you to pieces in seconds. And especially if you, well, actually, no, that day I was shooting a pair of over and unders with all the right kit and all the rest of it. But to be honest, I was all over the shop, and I hit one bird, and this particular bird, and the photo didn't it win an award or something ridiculous?
Yes, it did. Sorry, that's me being
It's an
embarrassed
amazing.
yet again by you. It was the Leica Field Sports Photographer of the Year. The overall winning shot was that picture, because it's it's just what everyone wants to get from their day's shooting, and that to me summed it up. Was not just your expression turning back and the fact that you both ignored the camera, you didn't know it was there. Effectively, you felt like a real fly on the wall. Both you and the loader were turning up agog, looking up to this bird, stratospheric, and it really was the bird of the day, and you set the precedent on the first drive of that day, basically. So, yeah.
First and last time, hey? But it was. But you're absolutely right about encapsulating, and this is why I love having a photographer out. Just to capture those images, because you then you remember them forever, and that you're absolutely right about that photo. I was so shocked, obviously, to pull down a bird on a shoot like that, and both my loader and I, we were just having a right little giggle about it, and you can see how long it took. The bird was still up in the air, and the cartridges were now going into the gun. We were still looking up at sort of at least 45 degrees.
Stuffing the next lot.
It's just unreal. But yeah, really awesome shoot. I mean, you're doing well to even spot them through your camera there. I mean, it's specks in the sky, really, aren't they? But
that is one thing that's actually quite a challenge with that shoot, is to actually see it in the photographs, to see the gun taking the shot in the corner of the image, and then see what bird they're shooting at and where they are so high.
Right, so that's England and Wales ticked off. So we've got Scotland left.
Scotland. Scotland is, well, as most people know, because if they've seen my Instagram, they know how much I bang on about going up to Scotland. And this past year, we've been very lucky to be introduced to a place called Tolkien Estate, which is in Speyside. And that was initially to do one of the recent Purdy photo shoots. And then we were lucky to go back there in November and spent a week documenting various elements of the whole estate. So we photographed a walked up shoot day and a driven day there, and just the scenery there. It's that, I don't know whether it's called old Scotland or what. It's not like the wild west coast of Scotland that's rugged and all rocky. It's more native forests, silver birches, pine trees, heather, more open moorland, and then you've got the Spey running through it. It's kind of got a bit of everything, really, as a wild estate. And the walked up day that we photographed, the light was stunning, which is obviously a big bonus, but it was just it was a magic day. Loved it. And I would be back there in a heartbeat. We were due to be there in January to photograph some snowy winter shoot days, and obviously lockdown put paid to all of that, so we should have seen it at its wintry finest, but there's always next season.
But look, hey, you've given some great advice to people, because actually being out, the scenery, everything else is such a crucial part of a day's shooting. It's just enjoying being out there. So Shallicombe, Coombe Sydenham, Let Weddigarth, Tolkien, look them up. They're awesome places, knowing some of those.
Yeah, and knowing what I know about the Spey, I can tell you that Tolkien is a fantastic salmon beat as well. So if you ever get the chance to fish that, I mean, I haven't had the chance either, but it's dead men's shoes there. But it's an amazing part of the world, that, and I have to say I can't wait to get back up there. So Sarah, the way we like to round these podcasts off is with desert island shooting, but I realised that we haven't actually asked you yet. You obviously have a very good understanding of shooting in general, and how a shoot day works, and what you need to look out for. But do you actually shoot yourself? You mentioned doing some stalking, but do you do a bit of game shooting as well?
I am fairly rubbish with a shotgun. I will admit that. I'm much happier with a rifle in my hands. That is definitely where I feel more confident.
Have you been taking lessons off Tom Payne? Is that why?
Oh dear. How can I even answer that without upsetting Tom?
It's okay, you can upset Tom. It's fine.
I think because I'm not proficient with a shotgun. Not yet, anyway. There are things in the pipeline, which means I shall hopefully be far better with a shotgun in the coming months. But I really enjoy seeing other people's days, photographing it for them, knowing that I couldn't ever shoot or hope in hell to hit the birds that they're shooting, doing it so well. Yeah, I get as much enjoyment. It's a real thrill to see other people shoot and photograph that and capture that moment, knowing that that's documented for them in perpetuity, basically. But back to the original question, because I'm stalling now. In terms of my desert island, my dream bucket list shooting, I'd quite like to go, again, this is with the rifle, I'd like to go on a caribou hunt in the wilderness in Alaska.
Wow.
That would be pretty cool. I'd really enjoy that. And I'd probably, this is cheating on the desert only, but I'd probably bring Adam along, my husband, to try and take photos of my hunt for me.
Oh, I think that's okay. I don't think the rule is that you're not allowed to bring anybody with you. Okay, I think that the people you take with you is as much a part of it as the destination, don't you?
You just don't tell them how much it costs.
Yeah. Either that, or if I became more proficient with a shotgun, I think walked up shooting in the wilds of Scotland, walked up grouse, woodcock, snipe, real wild, rough walked up shooting, that would be the dream for me. Anywhere up in north of Scotland, or anywhere in Scotland, to be quite honest, doesn't have to be, but that would be another dream, but two very different.
Yeah, I think stick with your caribou hunt. I'm absolutely with you on that. I remember trying to chase a caribou on some skis in northern Canada once, but anyway, another story for another time.
Oh, God, that another time.
Hang on, wait a minute. We're not glossing over that. Why were you intending to shoot the caribou, or you just decided to see if you could keep up?
The latter. I was without gun. We were doing a bit of cross-country skiing. We got completely lost, and then we saw this caribou, and we thought, "Oh, let's try and get close to that." And it was out in the middle of nowhere. We had this awesome little trip. Actually, we had huskies on sleds at the start of it, and we went through just over some frozen lakes. It was unbelievable. We had taught them in French. We were in French Canada, so it was a gauche, a droite, and I literally had to talk to the dogs in French. They were French dogs.
Wow.
But the whole experience was absolutely mega. So I haven't obviously been out there with a rifle, but I can tell you that just unbelievable scenery.
Seriously cool.
And then we made an igloo at night. It was absolutely bitter, and you had to dig the lower part so that the cold air dropped into that, and then you slept on the higher part and the rest of it. But
don't tell me you could see the northern lights as well. Don't tell me that was part of it, because that's like the full dream, isn't it?
Yeah, we didn't, but I imagine you can. Yeah, awesome.
Well, I mean, I don't know if any of our listeners are going to be able to fix Sarah up with a caribou hunt, but there must be somebody out there who can take Sarah out on a walked up grouse day. And if you would like to do that,
George, you're stopping. I think the caribou hunt is very possible. We've had correspondence from the US. We had our chap on the other episode who was talking about the ruffed grouse when he was on his walks in the snow, and he said it's a picture. Look, honestly, there's someone out there who can fix it. Yeah.
Oh yes, please. I'd be well up for that, definitely.
Well, anyway, if you would like to take Sarah out on a caribou hunt, or if you'd like to take a great out on a walked up grouse day, drop us an email, pod@gunsonpegs.com, and we'll send you some garters.
That sounds like a fair deal. That's a fair swap. Yeah.
I mean, we've been giving away a lot this episode. I think.
Well, I'm on my fourth whiskey. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling generous.
Give it all away.
Oh, very good. Well, Sarah, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us. Really, really lovely to chat, and thank you for everything you're doing, and thank you especially, obviously, during lockdown, all these things, for all the content you put on social media, inspiring us into our next days. I think that's where people like you really come to the fore.
So that's very really good. Nice to hear.
Yeah, well, it's been absolutely lovely having you on the podcast, Sarah. So before we go, as per usual, there's one final reminder that you can get your hands on a pair of the very exclusive Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters by sending us your shooting dilemmas for us to resolve, letting us know where you've been listening, sending us your suggestions for collective nouns. I'm going to forget something, but you've listened to the episode. You know what the thing is. Send us an email, pod@gunsonpegs.com. Until next time, thanks very much for listening, and goodbye.
Enjoy that end.